The night the police lights flooded the alley, a black waitress stood shaking beside a man she thought was just another customer. She didn't know yet that he owned everything she'd been risking her life to expose. She only knew one thing. If she trusted the wrong person again, she could lose her brother, her job, or worse. Days earlier, she had slid a handwritten note under a napkin, her fingers trembling as she wrote words no one had ever dared to say out loud. "The manager is stealing. He's threatening us. He knows where my brother is." She handed it to a stranger because she had no one else left to believe in. What followed wasn't just the fall of a corrupt man. It was the collision of power, race, fear, and truth inside a restaurant built on lies. And one question echoed through it all. Can justice exist when the world has already decided who deserves protection? Caleb Whitmore had spent his entire adult life being recognized before he ever spoke. The tailored suits, the quiet nods, the way doors opened before his hand reached the handle. In boardrooms across Texas and beyond, his name carried weight long before his voice did. That privilege had followed him for so long that lately it had begun to suffocate him. So on a humid Friday evening in Austin, Caleb did something no one in his inner circle would have understood. He left his penthouse in Westlake Hills wearing a faded gray hoodie, scuffed sneakers, and jeans with a frayed hem. The gold watch that usually hugged his wrist stayed locked in his bedroom safe. His black sedan with tinted windows stayed in the garage. Instead, he hailed a rideshare and slid into the back seat like a man no one would look twice at. Tonight, he wasn't the founder of a multi-million-dollar restaurant group. Tonight, he was just another customer. The driver dropped him off outside Heritage Grill, the flagship restaurant he'd opened a decade earlier, with a stubborn belief that food could bring people together. The place buzzed with life, laughter spilling onto the sidewalk, the smell of grilled meat drifting into the warm night air. Through the tall windows, Caleb could see candlelit tables filled with well-dressed diners. For a moment, he hesitated. This restaurant was his pride, his proof that success didn't have to strip away humanity. And yet, something had been bothering him for months. Anonymous complaints, subtle inconsistencies in reports, a growing feeling that the culture he'd built was being hollowed out from the inside. He stepped through the door. The shift was immediate. A hostess glanced up, scanned his clothes, then looked past him as if searching for someone more important. A family in tailored jackets walked in behind him, and suddenly smiles bloomed. Voices softened, and chairs scraped quickly against the floor to welcome them. Caleb stood there, waiting. Finally, the hostess sighed. "One?" she asked, already reaching for menus. "Yes," Caleb said calmly. She led him past the window seats, past the softly lit booths, and stopped near the swinging door to the kitchen. The clatter of plates and the sharp hiss of the grill filled the air. It was the worst table in the house, the kind reserved for people no one expected to complain. Caleb sat down slowly, his jaw tightening. This was his restaurant, and yet dressed like this, he was invisible. That's when Naomi Brooks approached. She couldn't have been older than her mid-20s. Her uniform was neatly pressed, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. Her skin was deep brown, glowing softly under the overhead lights. But what struck Caleb most wasn't her appearance. It was the way she looked at him, directly, fully, like he mattered. "Good evening," she said warmly. "Welcome to Heritage Grill. I'm Naomi. How are you tonight?" The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard. "I'm fine," he replied, and to his own surprise, he meant it. She handed him a menu and poured water without rushing, without glancing over her shoulder to see who might deserve her attention more. "If you have any questions, I'm right here." As she turned to leave, a sharp voice cut through the room. "Naomi." A tall man in a crisp button-down stood near the bar, his arms crossed. Derek Collins, the restaurant's general manager. He didn't bother lowering his voice. "Make sure he pays before you put that order in," Derek said, eyes flicking over Caleb with open disdain. "We've had issues." The words landed like a slap. Conversations nearby faltered. A couple at the next table looked away, embarrassed, or relieved it wasn't them. Naomi froze for half a second, then nodded, her shoulders tightening. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. Caleb felt heat rise in his chest. Not just anger, something heavier, something older. He watched Naomi's eyes drop, the practiced calm of someone who had learned when not to react. When Derek walked off, Caleb leaned forward slightly. "Does he always talk to you like that?" Naomi forced a small smile. "Don't worry about it. What can I get you tonight?" he ordered simply. As she wrote it down, Caleb noticed her hands trembling. Just a little. While he waited, he watched the room. How Derek laughed loudly with wealthy guests. How he ignored a black couple trying to flag him down. How Naomi and another server, both black, were assigned the most demanding tables, the least generous tippers. This wasn't subtle prejudice. It was systematic. Naomi returned with his plate, moving faster than before. She set it down, then, in one fluid motion, slid a folded piece of paper beneath his napkin. Their eyes met. In that brief glance, Caleb saw fear, real fear. She straightened. "Enjoy your meal," she said evenly, and walked away. Caleb waited until she was out of sight. His fingers trembled as he unfolded the note. "The manager is stealing, changing prices, taking tips. He's threatening staff. He knows where my brother is. He's sick. I don't know who else to ask. N." The noise of the restaurant faded into a dull hum. This wasn't just mismanagement. This was abuse, coercion, and the woman risking everything to tell him had no idea who he really was. Caleb looked across the room. Naomi was serving another table, her posture tense, her smile carefully controlled. Derek watched her like a hawk. For the first time in years, Caleb didn't feel powerful. He felt responsible, because now he knew something else too. If Naomi Brooks, an intelligent, hardworking black woman, could be treated like this in his restaurant, then the problem wasn't just one man. It was a system that assumed she had no protection, no voice, no one who would believe her. Caleb folded the note carefully and slipped it into his pocket, right over his heart. Tonight had already changed everything, and the night was far from over. Before we continue this story, let me ask you something. If you were in Naomi's place, would you have had the courage to pass that note? Yes or no? Let me know what you think. Your answer matters. Caleb didn't sleep that night. The note burned in his pocket long after he'd left Heritage Grill. Every word replayed in his mind like a siren he couldn't shut off. He'd spent years believing that building a fair company was enough, that good intentions at the top naturally filtered downward. But Naomi Brooks had risked everything to tell a stranger the truth, and that truth shattered his comfort. The next morning, Caleb made a decision that would push everything past the point of return. He went back. This time he dressed differently. Steel-toe boots, a faded work jacket with oil stains on the sleeves, a baseball cap pulled low. He practiced the posture too, the slight slump, the guarded eyes of someone used to being dismissed. The version of himself the world didn't see unless he asked it to. When he walked into Heritage Grill that evening, Derek Collins barely glanced up. "Same corner table," the hostess muttered, already turning away. "Perfect." Caleb sat and watched. He watched Derek hover near wealthy guests, laugh too loudly, clap men on the back. He watched Naomi move between tables with quiet efficiency, absorbing sharp comments, apologizing for things that weren't her fault. He watched another black server get blamed for a delayed order that came out of Derek's own interference. Then he saw it. A couple paid at the register. Derek leaned in, tapped a few keys, and subtly adjusted the total. When the cashier looked confused, he smiled and whispered something. She nodded, pale. Caleb's hands curled into fists. Naomi approached with his drink, her eyes flicking nervously toward the bar. "You okay?" she whispered. "I am," Caleb said. "Are you?" Her lips pressed together. "He's been asking about you." That was new. Before Caleb could respond, Derek appeared at their table, arms crossed, smile thin. "You hear a lot," Derek said. "What do you do for work?" Caleb met his gaze, steady. "Construction, when there's work," Derek snorted. "Figures. Listen, cash only from now on. Saves everyone trouble." Naomi inhaled sharply. Caleb didn't look away. "That a policy?" Derek leaned closer, lowering his voice. "It is when I say it is." Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Not just arrogance, fear. The kind that comes from someone who knows they're exposed. As Derek walked off, Naomi whispered, "You shouldn't come back anymore." Caleb shook his head. "I'm not leaving." That night, Naomi finally agreed to meet him outside the restaurant. They chose a public bench near a busy park, lights glowing, people walking dogs and pushing strollers. Even then, Naomi kept glancing over her shoulder. "He knows where my brother is," she said, voice shaking. "Evan's in treatment. Derek showed me photos. I don't know how he got them." Caleb's stomach twisted. "That's criminal." "I know," she whispered, "but no one believes girls like me, especially not when he's got friends." She didn't say what kind of friends. She didn't have to. Over the next week, Caleb returned again and again in different disguises. A delivery driver, a substitute teacher, a janitor finishing a late shift. Each time the pattern repeated. The same tables, the same suspicion, the same humiliations aimed at Naomi and the other black staff. He recorded everything, times, names, screenshots, quiet audio notes whispered into his phone from the bathroom. And somewhere in the middle of the danger, something else grew. Between hurried refills and stolen conversations, Naomi began to trust him. Not because he promised miracles, but because he listened. He asked about Evan's favorite music, about her childhood in East Austin, about the exhaustion of carrying fear home every night and pretending everything was fine. One evening, she admitted, "I thought about quitting. Then I realized he'd win." That same night, everything exploded. Caleb arrived to find Naomi shaken, her hands trembling as she wiped down a table that was already clean. Derek paced nearby, speaking harshly into his phone. When Naomi finally reached Caleb, her voice was barely audible. "He followed me last night." Caleb's pulse spiked. "What?" "There was a car outside my apartment. Same one from before." She swallowed. "Evan noticed." Rage surged through Caleb like electricity. This was no longer about a restaurant. This was about survival. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Naomi hesitated, then nodded. "Yes." That trust cost him everything. Later that night, as they slipped into Naomi's apartment to retrieve the evidence she'd hidden, tires screeched outside. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. Derek had found them. Caleb moved fast, calling a number he hadn't used in years. When he spoke, his voice was no longer uncertain or disguised. "This is Caleb Whitmore," he said. "I need security and law enforcement now." Naomi stared at him. "Whitmore?" she whispered. "As in—" "I'll explain," he said urgently. "But we have to go." They escaped through the back alley as Derek pounded on the door, screaming Naomi's name. When they finally stopped running, breathless and shaking, Naomi pulled her hand free. "So it was all an act?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "You were watching me the whole time." Caleb felt the weight of her words. "I went in to investigate," he said honestly. "But everything I feel for you is real." She shook her head. "You had power the whole time. I didn't." The sirens grew louder in the distance. Caleb realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about stopping Derek. It was about whether Naomi could ever believe that someone like him, rich, protected, white, could truly stand beside her without controlling the outcome. The police lights painted the alley in pulses of red and blue, slicing through the darkness as if the night itself were being interrogated. Naomi stood frozen, arms wrapped around herself, her breath coming out in short, uneven bursts. Caleb watched her carefully, knowing that whatever happened next would define not just the ending of this nightmare, but the truth of who he was to her. Derek Collins was arrested less than 10 minutes later. The evidence was overwhelming: altered receipts, stolen tips, threatening messages, surveillance photos taken illegally. When officers cuffed him, his confidence evaporated. The man who once ruled the dining room through fear looked suddenly small, shouting excuses no one listened to. Naomi didn't cheer. She didn't smile. She simply closed her eyes as if letting go of something heavy she'd been carrying for far too long. In the days that followed, everything slowed down. Statements were taken. Lawyers appeared. News broke quietly, then louder. Heritage Grill temporarily closed its doors, and whispers spread across Austin's restaurant scene. But for Naomi, the real battle wasn't public. It was internal. Caleb didn't show up at her door with grand gestures or promises. He didn't try to fix things with money. He did the hardest thing instead. He waited. When Naomi finally agreed to meet him, it wasn't in a restaurant or a park. It was in the hospital waiting room, late at night, the smell of antiseptic lingering in the air. Evan Brooks was asleep down the hall, exhausted from another round of treatment. Caleb sat beside Naomi, hands folded, silent. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. "No disguises, no plans, just me." She studied his face for a long moment. "You know how hard it is to trust someone after what happened." "I do now," he said. "And if you decide you never want to see me again, I'll respect that." That surprised her. "You're not going to fight me on it?" she asked. "No," Caleb said honestly, "because for once, this isn't about what I want." Naomi looked away, eyes shining. "All my life, people decided things for me. What I could handle, what I deserved. Who would believe me?" She swallowed. "Even you came into my life deciding." Caleb nodded. "I did, and I'm sorry." They sat in silence, broken only by the steady beep of machines down the hallway. Finally, Naomi spoke again. "When you sat at that corner table," she said, "you saw how they looked at you, like you didn't belong." "Yes," Caleb said. "That's how the world looks at me every day," she continued. "Not because of what I wear, because of who I am." "I know," he said quietly, "and I don't ever want to pretend I understand it better than you." That night didn't end with forgiveness. It ended with honesty, and that was enough to begin again. Weeks passed. Heritage Grill reopened under new management. Not quietly, publicly. Caleb held meetings with every employee, standing in the same dining room where Naomi had once been humiliated. He spoke plainly about failure, about responsibility, about how silence protects abuse. Naomi returned on her own terms, not as a server. She accepted a role overseeing staff training and accountability, shaping policies that made discrimination impossible to hide behind smiles and procedures. The first time she stood at the front of the room, addressing a diverse group of employees, her voice shook only once before it steadied. "I'm not here because of pity," she said. "I'm here because I earned it." And everyone knew it was true. Evan's treatment progressed better than anyone expected. On the day his doctor confirmed remission, Naomi cried harder than she had the night Derek was arrested. Caleb stood beside her, not as a savior, but as someone sharing a moment that didn't belong to him alone. Their relationship didn't move fast. They went on simple dates, coffee, walks, conversations that stretched into the night. Sometimes Naomi pulled back, the memory of fear rising unexpectedly. Sometimes Caleb stumbled, learning when to step forward and when to let go. But they learned together. One evening, months later, Naomi stood in the dining room after closing, watching staff laugh as they cleaned up. She turned to Caleb. "You know what changed?" she asked. "What?" he said. "For the first time, I feel like I belong somewhere without having to prove I deserve it." Caleb smiled softly. That's how it should have been from the start. Outside, Austin buzzed with life. Music drifted from nearby bars. Cars passed. People lived their lives unaware of the quiet revolution that had taken place inside one restaurant. Naomi reached for Caleb's hand. "This doesn't fix the world," she said. "No," he agreed, "but it fixes this. And sometimes that's where change begins." Now I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? Do you believe Naomi made the right choice by trusting again? Do you think people in power can truly change if they're willing to listen? If you like this story, comment 111 below. Tell us what country you're watching from. And if this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it.